As a Disney shareholder, I reserve all rights to be able to gleefully report on the fact that Snow White is a brutal disaster at the box office because I believe that that gets us closer to actual real life change at the company. That said, that is not exclusively what I will be doing in this video because there are some interesting things to talk about from the sort of I don't even know what you would call it, just the absolute atomic thrashing that this movie is going through at the moment. In an article titled Snow White Has Brutal Box Office Opening Weekend Fails to Meet Expectations Despite Huge Budget, subtitled Disney's Snow White remake had estimated budget of $250 million. The likes of Valiant Renegade and WDW Pro have reported, and I think with good reason, that this number is likely closer to 400 million, I think is what they had said, meaning that the movie would need to make 800 million likely to come anywhere close to breaking even. It will not do that. This article from Fox News by Courtney O'Brien, it reads as such. The bad press surrounding Snow White didn't improve this weekend as the live-action offering of the Disney classic opened with a lackluster box office haul. Snow White opened in the United States and Canada to $43 million in ticket sales, still coming in first place at the domestic box office, according to studio estimates. Real quick, I want to interject here. I caught a bit of a video from WDW Pro recently who says that, remember Dumbo? No, you don't. No one saw it. It was a massive bomb at the box office, and still, inflation adjusted, that opening weekend beat Snow White's opening weekend by $12 million. And that's just keeping up with inflation, not with box office inflation, which has outstripped regular inflation, meaning that a movie ticket costs more now than it used to by a larger margin than your average goods cost more now than they used to. Snow White opened in the where are we at here? 43 million in domestic ticket sales, still coming in first place at the domestic box office, according to studio estimates. The Los Angeles Times reported. It cost an estimated $250 million to make. The movie grossed $44 million overseas for a total global debut of $87 million, meaning that in order to turn a profit, this movie would basically have to have a 10 multiplier, meaning that it would 10x the money that it's made. Now, that would put it at 870 million, not 800 million, but I'm willing to bet that the overall cost of this movie was more than 400 million. I'm also willing, with all of the reshoots that we have heard that they had to go through, by the fact that everyone who's seen this movie says that it is a Frankenstein two movies smashed into one, and it's so bad that you can tell where these schisms happen. Also, the fact is that I guarantee you one of the very large markets for this movie in particular will be China. Disney still very popular in China. You make 50% if you're Disney and you're putting your movie into an American theater, you make 50% of that cut, thereabouts. It is not the same in China. You make what they tell you make. By way of comparison to other recent live-action Disney adaptations, The Lion King in 2019 made $191 million in its opening weekend domestically, and Beauty and the Beast in 2017 earned $174 million in the opening weekend. Now, there is a little bit of grace to be given to this film here. Not because Snow White should be 1/5 the size of The Lion King, not because Snow White should be 1/5 the size of Beauty and the Beast. No, Snow White should be on par with these, but nothing is opening to the tune that it did in 2019 or 2017. Hollywood and the box office at large are struggling. So there is that grace to be granted to this film, but that does not get you from $191 million like The Lion King to $43 million as this movie has supposedly scored in its opening box office weekend. The opening weekend was a disappointment as it was projected as recently as last month. You are not making this up. You are not misremembering this. It was projected as recently as last month to make upwards of $85 million in its opening weekend. But projections slid downward. Now, there are a few interesting talking points to take away from this. The number one thing here, in my opinion, is this: Rachel Zegler might be done. Rachel Zegler got the push, and she couldn't make it. Rachel Zegler was supposed to be the next big thing in Hollywood, was pushed as the next big thing in Hollywood. She starred in a Steven Spielberg movie, West Side Story. She starred as a Disney princess, Snow White. Neither of these are small accomplishments. She appeared, now I didn't see Shazam, so I have no idea how big her role was in that, but it is in her credits. She appeared in a DC Comics movie. We have seen from the MCU going back to the very first Iron Man with Agent Coulson, that even a small part, if it is in a good movie with a good crowd and a built-in audience, can project you forward. That guy made a career off of a bit part that was in the first Iron Man, yeah. She starred in a Hunger Games movie, which might not sound sort of on the surface as all that big a deal, but the Hunger Games was one of the biggest, if not the biggest, female-led franchises in box office history at that time. It launched many careers from that franchise, and it was female-driven. It should have been a home run for Rachel Zegler to step out of. None of these movies have been box office successes. Now, I have Aubrey Plaza written down there. Aubrey Plaza never got the push, at least not as far as I could tell. Why do I put that there? Well, Aubrey Plaza is extremely talented, I think. Aubrey Plaza has managed to build her own fan base through her acting career. This is something that matters. I'm going to put this out there, and it's not a gendered argument because it matters for men and women both, especially in something like Hollywood. Aubrey Plaza is an extremely attractive woman. We have these same arguments for Rachel Zegler, depending on the angle with Rachel Zegler. But you also have the fact that where these two diverge is somewhere very interesting. Rachel Zegler, known as a singer. I have no idea if Aubrey Plaza can sing. I have no idea. Aubrey Plaza came up, at least as far as I know, through comedy. She was in the Mystery Team movie before she had Scott Pilgrim versus the World. Is that what it was called? But the Mystery Team, by the way, was launched from a YouTube channel, Derek Comedy. So if you are not familiar with Derek Comedy, I cannot recommend that skit comedy highly enough. But I believe Aubrey Plaza also came up through improv comedy, which makes sense. Now, improv comedy being your strength versus singing being your strength, one of those two seems very much more marketable. It's the singing, guys, but it hasn't worked out for Rachel Zegler. And I've heard people say that Rachel Zegler is not just good at singing, she's very good at singing. I will believe them. I have no idea. I'm willing to give them the benefit of the doubt in their arguments. This, in my opinion, is also telling of the old ways, the old Hollywood, the old media versus the new media. Aubrey Plaza can create. Improv comedy is creative. Improv comedy is very difficult if you're going to actually be fun. We've all seen non-funny improv comedy. To be funny is very, very difficult, is very, very creative. I have heard Rachel Zegler talk. I don't think there's a creative bone in that individual's body. New media, the way things are going forward, being creative is much more important than being able to be handed a sheet and told these are the words that you sing. Now, I do not say any of this to revel in the fact that Rachel Zegler might be, her career, at least for a little bit, is going to be done. She's going to need to sit on the back burner for a little while and figure out some things. I don't say this to revel. She's 23 years old. She is a 23-year-old woman. Who among us was likable when we were 23? Nobody likes you when you're 23. But it is stunning how quickly this burnout was done on a speed run. West Side Story, for example, was 2021. We are here in early 2025. Is this ultimately a sign that the paradigm is shifting? In a different time, Hollywood would have just continued to shove the Rachel Zeglers of the world down our throats. And for the most part, we probably would have been ignorant to the kind of dunce that she is. Social media has allowed her to expose herself as kind of a dum-dum and a really unlikable individual. This is interesting in part because if this is also a sign of social tides changing. Hollywood, who went all in on Rachel Zegler, it would appear if we don't continue seeing Rachel Zegler, and Disney reports from Valiant Renegade suggest that they stopped promoting Snow White before it even came out in untraditional fashion, by the way. If Hollywood suggests they're done with her, at least for a little while, it suggests that Hollywood, too, might be through, at least to some degree, with the woke stuff. That is very, very interesting. There's no way Hollywood would have admitted this just a short time ago. You would have continued to see Rachel Zegler get, quote unquote, the push. The second thing we're talking about here, guys, I think it's possible because of the emerging sentiment around this movie from this weekend that the final numbers, once they drop, will be less than $43 million. How much less, I don't know. Any dollar less puts that multiplier much, much higher that they would have to get to simply to break even. They're not going to break even. They're going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars on this one film. This is 2 years in a row now that this has been going on. Now imagine, from that $43 million, 3 different groups of people emerge. There's the people with the morbid curiosity factor. How many people looked at this entire spin on this movie and thought, I just have to see it. I just have to know. How many people were people, and I understand that this is not millions of people, but it could be millions of dollars, depending on the theater, etc. How many of these were people who have YouTube channels or blogs, or were going to appear on the TV to talk about movies, or are professional movie reviewers, etc., that had to see this movie? How many of these people were hardcore Snow White fans, Disney fans, Rachel Zegler fans? Gal Gadot fans? How many of these people were people who were going to see this movie regardless of how good it did or did not look? Now, you take into account the fact that none of those people are going to rewatch, I should say, this movie. There will be no repeat attendance at this movie. Then you have all the people who were on the fence and are watching those reviews and decide not worth the $25 or whatever movies cost anymore. I have no idea. Not worth that money. The second weekend drop-off could be brutal. If we see a 60% second weekend drop-off, you're talking about the teens of millions of dollars. So, the last thing I want to talk about here sort of is this. This is Brave New World. This is the other movie that Disney has just released not too long ago. $192 million domestically. It's already had days under $1 million. Okay, so that 192, it might leg it out to 2 million, 205 million. It might. 208 million worldwide or international, meaning a $400,817,000 worldwide cumulative on Captain America Brave New World at this point. That's probably around where it will stop. Maybe, I don't know. You want to say 420? You want to say 420 is the tops on this thing? That's strange because there are people who say that this movie could have cost $350 million itself. Could have cost, I believe, $400 million itself. Why? Because it was reconfigured to the same extent that was Snow White. This is a Marvel movie that is not going to earn back potentially what it cost. Earn back what it cost. Not be profitable, right? When you're looking at the amount, that worldwide total there, half of it doesn't even go to Marvel, doesn't even go to Disney. It goes to the theaters. Half of that goes to the theaters. So you're looking at a movie that is bringing back to Disney $200 million. Meaning potentially this movie too has lost Disney hundreds of millions of dollars. And now they're going into Thunderbolts. That's not going to do well. They're going into Fantastic Four, which looks, just looking at that trailer, very expensive. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they figured something out at Disney to sort of save on cost. That's not typically their MO. Maybe there is something cooking under the surface of Fantastic Four, and it's going to be a very, very good movie. It does not look like it to me. It looks very expensive, and it looks, honestly, I don't know why, but it looks rushed. They've had years to make this movie. There was no supposed behind-the-scenes drama. There were no script leaks that, oh, well, X, Y, and Z is happening and people hate it, so we have to go back and change it. There was at least nothing rumored. By all rumors and accounts of which I know, the Fantastic Four filming went about as smoothly as a movie goes. And it's not going to matter. I don't think it's going to matter. I think that movie, too, is going to lose hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, I say all this as a Disney investor because I think that gives me the leverage, the intellectual leverage necessary to maintain these arguments. I'm not as invested, if you couldn't tell from the things that I haven't seen, that I've talked about already in this video. I'm not all that invested in the sort of entertainment side of things. I'm invested in the cultural side of things. I'm invested in the money side of things, every loss that Bob Iger endures, that this board at Disney endures, has to get them closer and closer to making the changes necessary to reclaim their position of prominence on a cultural level and therefore as an economic powerhouse. Interestingly, with the sort of rising tides of anti-Elon sentiment, not only does Elon Musk beef with Bob Iger, Mary Barra is on the board at Disney as well, and I believe just got reconfirmed to her place on the board. Mary Barra, who the former president, as sleepy as he was, it's a Snow White joke, mentioned GM as leading the way with electric vehicles. At a summit for electric vehicles to which Elon Musk was not invited. These things, many of them, are more interconnected than it seems on the surface, are more interconnected than, frankly, they have any right to be. There's no reason that the guy who makes electric vehicles should have a natural beef with the company that puts out Iron Man movies. Even if Iron Man is, or was at the beginning, loosely based on Elon Musk, the movie iteration of Iron Man, loosely based on Elon Musk. So, I say all that to say this. This sort of downfall of Disney is being precipitated. This downfall of Disney is being brought about. This downfall of Disney is exponentially accelerating now. Bob Iger has had the stock go nowhere for 10 years, and he will use the excuse, well, he wasn't the CEO that whole time. No, but he reclaimed CEO status in order to plummet the stock 50%. Every bomb that comes out, from Captain America to Snow White to that Indiana Jones movie and everything in between, every bomb that comes out, there should be more and more chatter about Bob Iger's legacy, because that's the only way. The shame factor of this is the only way to get someone so egotistical as Bob Iger out of the CEO chair, thinking that he can leave now. And maybe he has some way to retroactively spin things so that he was a success. Maybe he can get somebody in the chair that takes the company to new heights, and he can nibble off of their success. But right now, as things stand, I cannot stomach more Bob Iger. I can't do it. That is all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting a like button really does help me out. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, these are the types of things that I talk about on this channel. I talk about fitness as well. I talk about goal setting as well. I talk about all sorts of things. So consider hitting that subscribe button to stick around for more. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.